Most 11-year-olds spend their Saturdays watching cartoons or playing video games, but Maya Rodriguez spends hers sitting quietly in the corner of her mother's workplace, sketching circuit boards in a worn notebook while her mum cleans the executive floors of Technova Industries. Maya has learned to be invisible, to blend into the background of a world that wasn't built for someone like her. But today, being invisible won't be enough. Today, everything crashes. The morning started like any other. Maya walked exactly 4 steps behind her mother through the employee entrance, her backpack clutched tight against her chest. Inside that backpack was her most treasured possession, a tablet she'd built herself from discarded parts she found in the company's electronic waste bin. The screen had a crack running diagonally across it, and the battery only lasted 2 hours, but it worked. And for Maya, that was everything. Building C, floors 15 through 20, her mother whispered as they entered the elevator. That was their Saturday routine. While most of the building sat empty, Maria Rodriguez cleaned the executive offices, and Maya sat in the break room, lost in her digital world. Nobody questioned a cleaning lady's quiet daughter. Nobody even noticed her. Maya settled into her usual spot on the worn couch in the 20th floor break room. The executives used this space for their Monday morning meetings, but on weekends it belonged to her. She pulled out her tablet and opened the programming tutorial she'd been working through. Python Basics, the website said, though Maya had moved far beyond basics months ago. She was already building her own applications, small programs that solved problems she encountered in her daily life. She'd created a calculator that could handle her mother's complex work schedule, factoring in overtime rates and deduction calculations. She'd built a simple game that helped her practice English vocabulary words. Most recently, she'd been working on something more ambitious, a network monitoring tool that could detect unusual traffic patterns. She didn't fully understand why she was drawn to network security, but something about the logic of it, the way data moved through systems like water through pipes, fascinated her. The building hummed with the quiet energy of weekend maintenance. Elevators moved occasionally, carrying security guards on their rounds. The HVAC system cycled on and off with mechanical precision. And somewhere in the basement, the server farms that powered Technova's operations ran their endless calculations, processing the digital heartbeat of a company worth billions. Maya had been coding for about an hour when she heard the first unusual sound. It wasn't dramatic, just a slight change in the building's electrical hum. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but Maya had learned to pay attention to the subtle rhythms of the places she inhabited. The lights flickered once, so briefly that it could have been imagination. She looked up from her tablet, listening. The HVAC system, which had been cycling regularly, seemed to hesitate. The low background hum of the building's electrical systems shifted, like a song changing key. Maya frowned and went back to her coding, but part of her mind stayed alert, cataloguing the small anomalies. 20 minutes later, the real problems began. Maya was deep in a programming problem when every screen in the break room suddenly flashed red. The 2 wall-mounted monitors that usually displayed company announcements and stock prices now showed error messages in stark white text against crimson backgrounds. System failure, they read. Critical errors detected. Contact its support immediately. Maya stood up slowly, her tablet forgotten on the couch. She walked to one of the monitors and studied the error code displayed at the bottom of the screen. It was a string of numbers and letters that would have meant nothing to most people, but Maya recognized it immediately. It was a network failure code, specifically related to server overload and cascade errors. The elevator chimed in the hallway, and Maya heard voices for the first time that morning. Adult voices, tense and urgent. She moved to the break room door and listened. "When did this start?" a man was saying. "About 5 minutes ago," came a woman's reply. "Every system in the building is showing critical errors. The main servers, the backup servers, even the secondary backup systems. Have you tried restarting the network?" "That's what we're here to do, but the server room is locked down under emergency protocols. We can't get remote access, and the physical locks are controlled by the same system that's failing." Maya peered around the corner and saw 3 people in the hallway. 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing casual clothes but moving with the purposeful urgency of people dealing with a crisis. One of the men was on his phone speaking rapidly. "Sir, we need you to come in. Yes, I know it's Saturday. No, this can't wait until Monday. The entire network is down. Everything. Client databases, financial records, communication systems, everything." Maya ducked back into the break room as the group moved toward the stairwell. She could hear their footsteps echoing as they climbed higher, probably heading to the executive floors where the main IT control center was located. She looked back at the error messages on the monitors, her mind racing. A cascade failure that had taken down primary, backup and secondary systems simultaneously wasn't just bad luck. It was either the result of a coordinated attack or a fundamental flaw in the network architecture itself. Either way, it was exactly the kind of problem her network monitoring tool was designed to detect. Maya returned to her tablet and quickly opened the program she'd been working on. It was still rough, more of a prototype than a finished application, but it had one feature that might be useful. She'd programmed it to scan for open network ports and analyze traffic patterns. If she could connect to any part of Technova's network that was still functioning, she might be able to see what was actually happening. The break room had Wi-Fi, a guest network that employees could use for personal devices. Maya had connected to it before to research her programming projects. She opened her tablet's network settings and was surprised to see that the guest network was still active. Whatever had crashed the main systems had apparently left the guest network untouched. She connected her tablet and launched her monitoring tool. Immediately, her screen filled with data. Network traffic graphs, error logs, connection attempts, and failure notifications streamed across her cracked display. To most people, it would have looked like meaningless code. To Maya, it told a story. The network hadn't been attacked from outside. The failure pattern showed something much more concerning, a recursive loop error that was causing the system to essentially attack itself. Someone had pushed a software update to the main servers, and that update contained a bug that created an infinite feedback loop. Every time the system tried to correct the error, it generated more errors, which triggered more correction attempts, which generated even more errors. Maya studied the data streams, her fingers flying across her tablet's virtual keyboard as she traced the source of the problem. The recursive loop had started in the financial database servers, the most critical part of Technova's infrastructure. From there, it had spread to connected systems, overwhelming each one in turn until the entire network collapsed under the weight of its own attempted repairs. But Maya could see something else in the data, something that the people upstairs probably couldn't see from their locked-out control systems. The core network infrastructure was still intact. The servers weren't damaged, they were just stuck in an endless loop of error correction. If someone could access the root directory of the main database server and manually terminate the recursive process, the entire network could be restored. The problem was that accessing the root directory required administrative privileges that were controlled by the same system that was currently failing. It was like being locked out of your house because the smart lock was malfunctioning. Except in this case, the house was a billion-dollar company and the smart lock controlled everything from payroll to client data. Maya heard footsteps in the hallway again, this time accompanied by more voices. She moved back to the door and listened. "The CEO is on his way in," someone was saying. "He's not happy." "I don't blame him," another voice replied. "If we can't get this fixed before Monday, we're looking at millions in losses. The Hartman Industries contract alone is worth $12 million, and they're expecting their data migration to complete over the weekend. What about the IT department? Half of them are at a conference in Denver. The other half are trying to get remote access, but without the VPN servers, they can't get in either." Maya closed her eyes and thought. She had identified the problem, and she had a theory about how to fix it. But she was an 11-year-old girl sitting in a break room while her mother cleaned offices. Even if she could somehow access the server room, even if she could convince the adults to listen to her, there was no guarantee they would trust her solution. But as she listened to the growing panic in the voices outside, Maya realized that conventional solutions weren't working. The IT professionals were locked out, the remote access systems were down, the automatic backup protocols had failed. Someone needed to try something different. Maya looked at her tablet again, studying the network data. There was one possibility she hadn't explored yet. The guest Wi-Fi network was still functioning, which meant it was on a separate infrastructure from the main business systems. But most corporate networks had bridge connections between guest and internal systems, usually secured but sometimes overlooked by administrators who focused on external threats rather than internal vulnerabilities. She opened a new program on her tablet, a network scanner she'd borrowed from an open-source project and modified for her own use. If she could find a bridge connection between the guest network and the internal systems, she might be able to establish a backdoor route to the main servers. The scan took 10 minutes, during which Maya could hear more people arriving in the building. Elevators chimed frequently, and the voices in the hallways grew more numerous and more urgent. At one point, she heard someone mention calling the FBI, apparently concerned that the network failure might be the result of a cyber attack. Finally, her scan completed. Maya stared at the results, hardly believing what she was seeing. There was indeed a bridge connection between the guest network and the internal systems. It was hidden, probably installed by an IT administrator who needed a way to access internal resources while connected to the guest network for testing purposes. It was exactly the kind of backdoor that security experts warned against, but right now, it might be the only way to save Technova's entire digital infrastructure. Maya took a deep breath and began typing. She was about to attempt something that could either fix the company's problems or make them much worse. If she was wrong about the source of the recursive loop, her interference could potentially corrupt data or cause additional system failures. But if she was right, and if she could successfully terminate the runaway process, she might be able to restore the entire network. The next 30 minutes were the most intense of Maya's young life. Using her tablet's limited processing power and the unstable bridge connection, she navigated through layers of network infrastructure that she had only read about in tutorials. She found the main database server, identified the recursive process that was causing the cascade failures, and began the delicate work of terminating it without triggering additional errors. It was like performing surgery with a butter knife. Her tablet's cracked screen made it difficult to read the code clearly. The bridge connection was slow and occasionally dropped out entirely, forcing her to restart processes multiple times. But gradually, carefully, Maya began to unravel the digital knot that had paralyzed Technova's entire operation. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice when the voices in the hallway stopped. She didn't hear the elevator arrive or the footsteps approaching the break room. She only looked up when a shadow fell across her tablet screen. A man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway staring at her with an expression of complete bewilderment. Behind him were 3 other people, including the woman Maya had seen earlier. All of them were looking at her tablet, then at her, then back at her tablet. "Excuse me," the man in the suit said carefully. "What exactly are you doing?" Maya's first instinct was to close her tablet and pretend she had been playing games, but as she looked at the man's face, she realized that pretending wouldn't help anyone. The network was still failing, and if her repair work was interrupted now, the recursive loop might restart and cause even more damage. "I'm trying to fix your servers," Maya said quietly. The man blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" One of the other people, a younger man with thick glasses, stepped forward. "Sir, that's impossible. She's just a kid, and she's using a tablet. There's no way she could access our internal systems." Maya looked at her screen, where lines of server code were scrolling past as her termination process continued running. "I found a bridge connection between your guest Wi-Fi and your internal network. Your main database server is stuck in a recursive loop that's causing cascade failures across all connected systems. I'm manually terminating the runaway process." The silence that followed was so complete that Maya could hear the building's HVAC system cycling on again. The man in the expensive suit, who Maya was beginning to realize must be someone very important, moved slowly into the break room and looked at her tablet screen. "Show me," he said. Maya turned her tablet so he could see the display. The cracked screen made it difficult to read, but the code was clearly visible. Lines of server diagnostics, error logs, and system processes scrolled past as her program worked to isolate and terminate the recursive loop. "This is our internal database structure," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. Who are you?" "My name is Maya Rodriguez. My mum cleans the offices here on weekends. I was just sitting here coding when your systems crashed, and I thought maybe I could help." The woman who had been in the hallway earlier stepped forward. "Sir, this could be a security breach. We don't know how she gained access to these systems." But the man in the suit, Maya was now certain he was the CEO, held up his hand for silence. He was studying her tablet screen with intense concentration. "This diagnostic code," he said. "Where did you learn to write diagnostic code?" "I taught myself," Maya said. "I found some tutorials online, and I've been practicing with programs I built myself." "How old are you?" 11. The CEO sat down heavily in one of the break room chairs. 11 years old, he repeated. He looked at the other people in the room. "She's 11 years old and she's doing something that our entire IT department couldn't do." The younger man with glasses moved closer to look at Maya's tablet. "The recursive loop termination process," he said slowly. "That's actually brilliant. Why didn't we think of that?" "Because," the CEO said, "we were trying to fix the problem from the outside. She's fixing it from the inside." He looked at Maya again. "How did you know it was a recursive loop?" Maya turned her tablet back toward herself and opened the network monitoring program she had created. "I built this to analyze network traffic patterns. When your systems crashed, I used it to scan the error data and trace the source of the problem." She showed them the graphs and data streams that had led her to identify the recursive loop. The adults watched in fascination as she explained how the cascade failure had spread from the financial servers to the backup systems to the secondary backups. "The problem wasn't external," Maya explained. "It was internal. Someone pushed a software update that contained a bug, and that bug created an infinite feedback loop. Every time the system tried to fix the error, it created more errors." The CEO nodded slowly. "The financial system update. We pushed it Friday night." He looked at his colleagues. "The update that was supposed to improve our quarterly reporting efficiency." Maya's tablet chimed softly. She looked at the screen and smiled for the first time that morning. "The recursive process has been terminated," she announced. "Your systems should start coming back online now." As if on cue, the wall-mounted monitors in the break room flickered. The red error messages disappeared, replaced by the familiar blue and white of Technova's standard interface. Somewhere in the building, Maya could hear the sound of systems restarting, elevators moving, and the normal electrical hum of a fully operational facility. The CEO stood up and walked to one of the monitors. He touched the screen as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. "It's working," he said. "Everything's working." He turned back to Maya, who was closing her tablet and preparing to slip back into invisibility. "Wait," he said. "Don't go anywhere. We need to talk." Maya looked toward the door, where her mother had just appeared. Maria Rodriguez stood frozen in the doorway, holding a bucket of cleaning supplies and staring at the group of executives surrounding her daughter. "Mrs. Rodriguez," the CEO said, recognizing her, "your daughter just saved our company." Maria's eyes widened. She looked at Maya, then at the executives, then back at Maya. "What did you do?" she asked. "I fixed their computers, Mama," Maya said in Spanish. The CEO, who apparently spoke Spanish, smiled. "She did much more than that." He knelt down so he was at Maya's eye level. "Maya, what you did today was extraordinary. You solved a problem that our entire IT department couldn't solve. You used skills that most adults don't have, and you did it because you wanted to help." Maya shifted uncomfortably under the attention. "It was just a logic problem," she said. "Like a puzzle." "No," the CEO said firmly. It was much more than that. It was intuition, creativity, and technical skill all working together. It was exactly the kind of thinking that built this company in the first place. He stood up and looked at Maya's mother. Mrs. Rodriguez, I would like to discuss your daughter's future with you. I think she has extraordinary potential, and I want to make sure she has every opportunity to develop her talents. Maria Rodriguez looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and bewilderment. She's always been good with computers, she said, but I didn't know she could do anything like this. The CEO smiled. I don't think any of us knew she could do anything like this, but now that we do, we need to make sure she gets the education and opportunities she deserves. Maya looked around the room at all the adults staring at her. For the first time in her life, being invisible wasn't an option, but as she met the CEO's eyes and saw the genuine respect and admiration there, she realized that maybe being seen wasn't such a bad thing after all. Over the next hour, as Technova's systems fully came back online and the scope of Maya's accomplishment became clear, the executives worked out the details of what would happen next. Maya would be enrolled in an accelerated computer science program. She would have access to internships and mentorship opportunities. Most importantly, she would have the resources and support to continue developing her extraordinary talents. But perhaps the most significant change was simpler than all of that. When Maya walked through Technova's offices now, she wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, recognized, and valued for exactly who she was, a brilliant young woman with the power to solve problems that others couldn't even understand. As Maya and her mother rode the elevator down to the lobby that afternoon, Maya reflected on how quickly everything had changed. This morning, she had been just another invisible kid in the corner. Now she was a member of Technova's technical team, with her own security badge and a direct line to the CEO. Maya, her mother said softly, are you sure about all this? It's a big change. Maya looked at her reflection in the elevator's polished steel doors. The girl looking back at her wasn't the same person who had entered the building that morning. This girl had been tested, had risen to meet a challenge, and had proven that she belonged in rooms where important decisions were made. I'm sure, Mama, Maya said. This is what I want to do. The elevator doors opened, and Maya Rodriguez stepped out into her new life, no longer invisible, no longer overlooked but finally seen for who she truly was. A brilliant problem solver with the power to change the world, one line of code at a time. But this was just the beginning of Maya's story. As word spread throughout the tech industry about the 11-year-old girl who had single-handedly saved a billion-dollar company, opportunities began pouring in from around the world. Universities offered her scholarships, tech companies offered her internships, media outlets wanted to interview her. Through it all, Maya remained focused on what mattered most to her, solving problems and helping people. She used her newfound platform to advocate for better computer science education in schools, especially for students from underrepresented communities. She created tutorials and resources to help other young people learn programming and network security. And every Saturday, she still went to Technova with her mother. But now, instead of sitting invisible in the break room, she worked alongside the company's top engineers, contributing to projects that would shape the future of technology. Maya's story became an inspiration to young people everywhere who felt overlooked or underestimated. She proved that brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most powerful solutions come from minds that think differently than everyone else. Years later, when Maya had founded her own tech company and become one of the youngest CEOs in Black Valley, she would often tell interviewers that her success began with a simple decision: to help when help was needed, regardless of whether anyone was expecting it. The most important lesson I learned that day, she would say, is that being invisible isn't about hiding from the world. It's about seeing the world clearly enough to understand what needs to be fixed. And once you see the problem clearly, you have a responsibility to fix it, even if no one thinks you can. Maya Rodriguez had started that Saturday morning as an invisible girl in the corner. By the end of the day, she had become exactly what the world needed: a brilliant young woman with the courage to step forward when others stepped back, the skills to solve problems that others couldn't solve. and the wisdom to use her gifts in service of something greater than herself. And it all began with a crashed system, a cracked tablet, and an 11-year-old girl who refused to let impossible be the final answer. Maya's journey reminds us that the greatest solutions often come from the most unexpected places, and true vision sees beyond titles and expectations. If this story of courage, ingenuity, and breaking boundaries resonated with you, consider subscribing to our channel, Tales Within Stories. Here, we're dedicated to bringing you stories that celebrate unseen potential, the power of human connection, and the incredible moments when ordinary people achieve the extraordinary. Your support helps us continue to shine a light on these inspiring narratives and proves that talent knows no limits. Join our community. Let's keep exploring the stories that truly move us